Thanks, Vinay. Yeah, everyone. We are on time. We'll just wait for 4 minutes. Meanwhile, people who are joining us for the first time maybe can tell us where you're joining us from, who are you, and a little bit about which network you come from.
Namaste. I'm Krishna. I'm from Nepal, Kathmandu. I'm working with an alliance called Agriculture for Food. So actually, we are trying to raise the question on the modern agriculture that is almost on the damaging the life and livelihood of people and disseminating the whole system of agriculture in Nepal. So you might have some idea that we are the most potential the country to produce good quality food, but we are importing from India and elsewhere. So we are trying to raise this the question how we can make our agriculture system more the working, would say. Thank you. Hello.
We have no camera or mic on this computer. Okay. Sayed, where are you from?
I'm basically from India, but I've been in Qatar for the last 13 years. So I'm part of a small first environmental NGO registered in Qatar. But I work in Qatar Foundation as a researcher in the National Library. So I'm an adjunct assistant professor as well, teaching environmental science for journalism students.
Yeah. Wow. Environmental science for journalism students.
Yeah, I just proposed it. Like I thought, like it's mandatory. So the university was kind to accept my proposal. So I was supposed to initially to teach political science students, and but the journalism university wants us to teach that one because of the growing environmental problems. So I'm trying to work with Al Jazeera English to see if there is something that we could do. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
And my interest too, particularly for today's program, is that we're trying to, there is a growing kind of, not movement, I could say, but a kind of habit for people to grow food in their rooftops, particularly after the 2017 blockade that Qatar experienced. Much of the food that we used to get from Saudi Arabia, and it's been completely blocked. And now suddenly the Qatar started to realize the importance of food sovereignty and food security. Although it never had an issue in terms of food security because it has huge wealth to import. But now there is a kind of a growing sense of awareness to grow locally. So I'm just trying to see how it can grow sustainably in terms of with lack of resources. We don't have soil, we don't have water, extreme weather. So how we kind of grow in such hostile environment. And that's something that we are trying to understand as a part of our NGO. And I wanted to learn today how different people do different things. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. I think we should begin, and people will keep joining in as and when they can. Is that okay for the rest of the team? Okay. Ashish, can you please share the screen for the Vikalp Sangam presentation? Ashish? Okay. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us today. we're going to have a very interesting discussion on a very interesting topic. But before we begin today discussing that, I just want to briefly take you through the Vikalp Sangam process and why did something like Vikalp Vārtās or dialogue series on alternatives began. So the Vikalp Sangam process, as a process, started in year 2014. And the idea of this process was simple, that for a very long time, resistance movements and people who have been involved in struggles have been articulating what's wrong with the systems. And we have had very little space to really talk about a lot of grassroots processes, people attempting different things, trying to challenge systems and talking about those various ways of being. And so the idea was basically this, that how can these local processes by people, by communities, by NGOs, by civil society actors can be spoken about, not just in the mainstream systems, but within the civil society even more. And so the idea began of bringing together these various alternatives from environment, ecology, health, settlements, livelihoods, food and water in a common space and a platform where we can learn from each other, exchange ideas, collaborate cross-sectorally, and importantly, envision a future collectively of what kind of societies we want when we look at various sectors comprehensively, when we look at life in a much more cross-sectoral way. And so the process began, and there are various strands of the process. One is organizing physical gatherings, which is where people from various regions of the country, from various sectors come together, share what they've been doing, collaborate, find ways of working together. And we have had 20 Sangams so far, confluences of various kinds based on themes of livelihoods, economies, youth, energy, food, and also various regions like Kutch, Ladakh, Maharashtra. So series of these physical spaces. And the idea is also to document a lot of these stories that actually don't find space in the mainstream media. We don't usually talk about these stories. So how can we begin documenting all of these stories? So here's the website called vikalpsangam.org. And it has around 1600 stories of these various processes from across India where people are attempting to do things differently, trying to challenge the systems, finding new ways of living and being. And hence, after the pandemic and the series of not just the health crisis, but also economic, political crisis that emerged with it, many of us realize that there are many examples that already exist of how people have been trying to do things differently. And when in these times people are looking for those answers of how we can do things in a different way, why these current systems are so messed up, which cannot even provide for basic security to people, for basic needs, there is something fundamentally wrong with these systems. And so when people are looking for a lot of answers, why not have that space of dialoguing among these various alternatives? And so hence dialogue series on alternatives began, and it's great that we have reached to our 14th conversation series. And this brings us today to today's conversation, which is Anjali and guys who will be talking to us about an effort which is being made in Pondicherry to localize the food systems by supporting community gardens and urban farming, and the idea of also connecting the retailers and the restaurants with the ecological farmers networks, and how an alternative currency model is also being tried out, and similar initiatives are being tried to connect across the world. So we will get to know more about what Anjali and guys are attempting along with their collective and what they're trying out. And before that, I just want to also briefly introduce both the speakers for today. So Anjali has been working on sustainable textile with sustainable textile industry for many years now. And she had been running a fair trade garment factory in Pondicherry. And that is how she got in touch with a lot of farmers and also tried to get in sense of the value chain perspective, which is in fact very crucial in these discussions and usually ignored. And so after her factory was closed, she was trying to be working with many different actors in this. And recently, during the COVID pandemic, she was working with a lot of frontline workers, supporting them, organizing various activities that she can also tell us about. And so has been a kind of a hands-on mobilizer during these times. And Guy's roots himself in the fair trade movement, coming from the producer angle and from that perspective. And he studied organic agriculture in Netherlands. And since last 17 years, he has been working with various farmer collectives in India and has been involved in food systems processes in Pondicherry and Oroville. And he believes in the social enterprise and startup idea, and has also been supporting that processes and has been an incubator for last 7 years. So over to you guys and Anjali, and we're looking forward to a very interesting discussion. And there are not many people today, so I would encourage people to have it, keep your mics mute while speakers are talking, but do post in your comments and thoughts so that once the speakers are done, we can get into a more fuller and an open dialogue for today. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, and Anjali.
Thank you, Shrishti. So I'll start sharing my screen. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. So the way that we've prepared this is that I'll sketch a bit of the broad picture background, and Anjali will go more in depth into what's happening on the ground as of now. And then I will talk a little bit more about what is our future prospects. How are we envisioning this unfolding further? So yeah, we're calling it a local food system. Oh yeah, so Shrishti has just introduced herself over the chat. You want to say anything more about yourself, Shrishti?
No, please, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, we often amongst ourselves, we talk about it as the local food system platform, because we want to create something that can give birth to many other things, but what keeps them all together is that they're connected to the local food system in Pondicherry and Oroville. And then I go to next. Yeah, so we didn't start this actually, Anjali and myself. It was launched by the French Institute a few years ago, who were doing an annual food festival every year, bringing various stakeholders together. The French Institute in Pondicherry is, it's mainly a research organization. So they study ecology, they study local culture. It's an organization with a lot of history. I'll show you a picture in a minute of our meeting in the library, and you can see how old it is. I myself am working with a social entrepreneurship association in Oroville, and Anjali is working with the Fairtrade Twin Towns, Pondicherry and Oroville. We joined the French Institute as co-organizers, and in these pictures here you see us meeting with a whole range of stakeholders. So there's somebody who's running a restaurant, somebody who's running a cultural center in a city, somebody who's running a farm, somebody who's running a local food processing unit, somebody who works with fisher women, and somebody who's doing academic research. So I think that is, it's I think key to the flavor of this platform, that it has people from a lot of different backgrounds. Here is the picture, as I promised, of the old library. Apparently there's one room in this institution where they have inscriptions on palm leaf, which are hundreds of years old. So it's a very, very rich environment to be in. What we are focusing on so far is these 7 points. And the first couple of points we're actively making some progress in. So Anjali will tell you a bit more about that, which is urban farming / community gardening, and then working with local existing farmer groups around the town, and then looking at local procurement, and then bringing producers and consumers together. What we've not yet managed to be very active on, but we feel are also really important, are waste. So if you look at the whole food system, it's not just getting biomass from villages into the town, but it's also somehow making the cycle of the waste biomass from town back to the village. We're also looking at the waste in a more, you can say, abstract way. So looking at where you might have hidden abundance, even at the farm level itself. So there are many cycles that are not yet, loops that are not yet closed. And when we talk about waste, we're basically talking about closing as many loops as possible. And then education and awareness. So yeah, maybe when Anjali shares, she can talk a bit about the insights that happen when people actually start working with food systems. It changes your perspective completely. And this can happen in a very organic, informal way, but it can also happen in a more structured way. So we're thinking, for example, of doing cooking classes and sharing recipes and knowledge about local ingredients and so forth. And then ultimately, I've kept that for last because it's my hobby horse, so I can get a bit carried away talking about this, is regenerative economy. So food, sharing food itself is of amazing value, but currently we only see it if it's expressed in government rupees. And we want to get away from that because we believe it's actually standing in the way of other forms of relationships and acknowledging other forms of wealth and being more creative about how we're creating and sharing value. And it's also very much related to governance. So as you saw before, there are multiple stakeholders involved. They all come with different interests, with different perspectives, different worldviews. And if you have an economic system where only the rupee counts, then you can't really have an inclusive participatory decision-making. So this last bit is about that as well. And if we have a stakeholder-driven governance, it means that the entire food system can decide its own future, which is something that we're very excited about. Now, I said that the French Institute is a research organization, so we have a research agenda. This means that there are actually scholars, some of them might be even on this call, who are doing their PhD on these different topics, whether it is ethnobotany or what do you call study of insects, entomology, impact measurements, whether it is ecological or social impact, waste flows, looking at circularity of nutrients, and then finally the economic models. The French Institute of Pondicherry also has a lot of international collaborations with people who are studying food systems in other parts of the world. So we also hope that what we're learning in Pondi can be shared with other parts of the world and vice versa. And also because more and more documentation will happen, we're hoping that we can groom more participants and educate them on what's going on and what is the potential. So that was the big picture view. And now I'll hand over to Anjali to talk more about what's actually going on in these circle gardens. Anjali.
Thank you, Srishti, for the introduction and for having us over on this platform. And thank you guys for a big picture and an overview of what we have been doing. So very quickly, I'd just like to start by saying that this effort of what we have started doing in Pondicherry is very, very new. It has started only in the month of July, although we have been talking about it 6 months before, but somehow somehow, when the shutdown happened, we just started our project. So it's a very new project. There are a lot of questions still unanswered. But I think as we go along the journey, we will be facing those challenges and then answering those questions. So to start with the circle garden, the reason why we started calling it the circle garden is because we were inspired by Krishna Mackenzie from the Solitude Farm in Orville, who has been working on circle gardens based on permaculture. So he was the one who inspired us, and he has been actually quite instrumental in starting these gardens with us in Pondicherry. We felt that, Pondicherry, we wanted to have these gardens in people's homes, in small communities, in spaces like schools and universities, and not necessarily everybody has a lot of space. So the circle garden was a three-dia circle in which the way Krishna had shown us would be divided into four plots, and then you have your greens and your long-term, long-duration plants. How you have maybe a fruit tree in the middle, and then you have your green and your mid-term plants, and he had a whole way of doing it. So that is why we adopted his way. That is why we adopted his way, and we found that it was quite doable in a city environment. So if you see here, we've been, we have done it in a public space, we have done it in private homes. And what we also want, what we have seen that with this circle gardens, the participation of the citizens of Pondicherry has been, we have actually had to reduce and ask them, to come fewer in numbers, and we limited the number to 12 or 15, because otherwise the participation was becoming too much to handle under the COVID. We also realized that the people who were participating had already knowledge of local weeds, local greens, local vegetables and fruits, and local traditions. So if you see, we celebrated Adi Puruka also in a celebration before the sowing of all the seeds. And if you see in the Chetti, we are also learning about what are the local weeds and seeds that one can grow, which are edible. And so it was, initially there was a very interesting, when we reached out to people and asked them to join this initiative, the first thing I was asked was, oh, how much do we pay to register? And I kept telling them, this is not on payment. It is about coming together of citizens, learning skills, exploring new relationships with our soil, with with Mother Earth. And it was very difficult for them. And they said, no, but are you sure that, after 3 times that we come, there is not going to be any payment? So I did realize that we are so used to having a monetary exchange for anything we do, that when we propose something without that, people are not very comfortable initially. But then as we finished 2-3 gardens, people were really joining in, bringing, there were ladies who were collecting leaves and twigs during the week and bring them for the next gardens. So there has been, so far we have done about 6 circle gardens that have been completed. And actually today was the first day we had our fair food circle. So that would go to the next slide, where we actually plucked the greens, the weeds, and we all came together and we cooked together and we had a lovely meal together. I was just sharing with Hais that it was an interesting experience for me to see, like, we were about 15 of us and everybody had some traditional recipe to contribute for the cooking that we did together. And when we plucked the greens, we were amazed to see that we had nearly 6-7 different greens that had grown in our circle gardens. And so we cooked together, and before eating, you know, usually when we have the food that is cooked in our kitchen and it's brought to our tables, we hardly even think. We just pounce on our food and we gobble our food in, and then we are up to our next appointment or next meeting or next work that we have to do. But the fact that we had plucked the leaves, we had washed them, we had cooked them in open air on a stove, you know, collecting wood and, you know, making the food ourselves. When we got the food on our table, it was like a prayer. You know, everybody was like so silent and so conscious, and we ate our food with so much gratitude. And that was a emotion that was felt not only by me but everybody else who was there. And so we feel that there are many conversations and you know, systemic change that we would like to bring through the food systems that we are now trying to do, especially in the urban sector. And from here, what we also feel is we go back now trying to connect the farmers to the consumers. So this happened during the lockdown. There was a farmer who approached me saying that, you know, I have so many mangoes and my mangoes are all getting spoiled. So is there a way that you can, you know, help me? And I realized that it was, you know, WhatsApp group today is a big platform where everybody is so closely connected. So we created a WhatsApp group, and within a couple of days, you know, more than the mangoes he had were actually got sold. And then we realized that there are so many other farmers who are suffering and finding it very, very challenging economically to overcome, you know, during the pandemic lockdown. So how is it that we can connect them directly to consumers? So this has been our next effort, where we have, so for the consumer to understand, it's very, very important to go to and visit the farm, because unless you visit a farm, you really cannot connect with the farmer, because it's not about only a produce. It is also about, you know, understanding the practices of farming, what are the values, you know, the farmer stands for, understanding also the challenges he faces. And only when you understand the challenges are you able to even support the farmer. So we've had 2 visits with the farmers. The first picture on top is a farmer who is practicing permaculture, and we are standing actually at his sugarcane farm, and he has not sown this plot of land from where he gets his sugarcane, and which is then converted into jaggery, for the past 10 years. He just cuts the stub, and then from there the next sugarcane is coming. And so it was so interesting for us, because yes, we have heard about it, you know, but when you see it yourself, when you experience it firsthand from a farmer, it then becomes a real experience, and it becomes more real and more true to your choices that you would like to make in your everyday buying process. So if you go to the next slide, in Pondicherry, around Pondicherry and the bioregion, there are already about more than 80 farmers who are doing organic farming, and not only that, even certified organic. Now their biggest challenge is access to market and to be able to sell their produce to the end consumer. So what we have done is we have gone, visited their farms, understood a little bit about what are the crops that they are growing. Are they doing multi-crops? Are they doing single crops? Is there intercropping going on? So understand each one's method of farming. And then we are seeing how we can connect them to, as Rais was saying, to restaurants in Pondicherry, to cafeterias in Pondicherry, to school canteens, to university canteens. So what happens is they are assured that whatever they produce is bought. Another thing that we also felt was important is that when the farmers, for example, have some fruits that come up like guava, after a while they have so much produce that if they do not sell within a certain time, their fruits and vegetables get spoiled. So what the discussion and the conversation we were having with these farmers was to see whether they could value add at the farm level, you know. So I'll give an example of, let's say, basil. A bunch of basil leaves they sell at 24 rupees, but if they make pesto, they can sell a bottle of pesto for 110 rupees, you know. So how can they value add at the farm level and get an added income? So this was another thing that we have been having conversations. I have given an example of a basil to pesto, but there are other so many traditional chutneys and pickles and sauces that they already know how to make, but somehow they have never connected it to their farm level. They do it in their homes, but not at the farm level. So that is another conversation we are seeing, because eventually creating sustainability within the farmers is very important to also engage with other non-organic farmers to convert them into organic farming. So we are also really focusing on seeing how farmers can be empowered and value be added at farm level to ensure that another thing that we have been also proposing to restaurants who are now wanting to tie up with our farmers. You know, they buy the vegetable from the farmers, then they clean it and cut it in their restaurants which are in the cities, and then the waste is thrown, you know, in the municipality bins that are there on the streets. So what we are discussing with the restaurant owners are, can we get the vegetables cleaned and cut and peeled in the farm level, so all the waste that is generated remains in the farm, we do not need to transport it back. So when Heis was mentioning about circularity, about zero waste, about reducing waste, these are the other things that we are trying to do, with bringing collaboration between the restaurant, the coffee shops, with the farms and the farmers, to see how this was also a very interesting experience when we have been working with the farmers. And one, you know, this experience makes me really ponder and wonder how we have got there. So when we had a few workshops and meetings where we were around a big table with farmers and with the restaurant owners and with retail store owners and all, the feeling of a farmer was always that, oh, I have a produce and here I have a buyer, you know, and this is the cost of my produce for the buyer. Now, when we are sitting around a round table, there is no hierarchy. We are all equals. I mean, there is no food on our table if there is no farmer, you know. And I think we need to reverse um, the not only the respect. We need to give back the farmers the respect and the dignity which has been exploited for so many years, where they really feel that they're insignificant. And I think that's absolutely not the case. So these are also very important but very subtle conversations that we are having with the farmers, to say that, to actually show them the importance of what they're doing. And it's not going to be easy, because they're so used to a different type of system, that to change that system would be quite tough. Coming to the next slide, we also felt that you know, the farmers have been feeling that another way of having access to consumers would be through a farmers market. And we do feel that that is something that could add not only value to the farmers, but it will also create a bigger awareness in the consumers when they meet the farmers who have grown their food. And so we have been talking to the Pondicherry government over here, and they're very keen to give us space. So this is one of the spaces that the Pondicherry government has suggested to us, and we are discussing about maybe one or two other spaces as well, where we could have a weekly farmers market, and you know, then engage over there with the farmers and consumers. Maybe have little workshops which could be different farming opportunities, different recipes that can come up with local foods, and make it into a fun community development space, you know. And it could be with songs, it could be with traditional dance that farmers do generally during the farming season. So it would be also a way of um, bringing back those traditions and cultural activities that happened around farming. And last but not least, was a platform that we would like to create, which would be, is there a slide on that, Qais? No. Okay.
E-commerce? No.
Yeah. So we also felt that, yes, it is good to have what we are looking at, but giving them a platform on an e-commerce platform would also be something helpful, because it would help them to reach out much distances much greater than just limited to Pondicherry. Although local is something that we really stand for, but giving farmers an opportunity to sell their produce even beyond local would be even a win-win situation for them. So these are a few things, activities that we have been having. Today was the first day that we had our Fair Food Circle. So there's a lot, we have had learnings from there, a lot of insight. Another thing that we were thinking, which is something that we have experienced during our circle gardens, was indigenous seeds. Right now in the market, it's full of GMO seed. And it was interesting because one of the participants who visited our circle garden event once went home, did it herself, but she went and got seeds from the local market. And none of her seeds flowered or blossomed. And she was wondering why, what happened. So the importance of getting indigenous, authentic seed, non-GMO seed is also a way to educate people, even consumers, even those who just want to do gardening, the importance of seed. So we do also want to start a seed bank, because now that we have started our gardens, we will be getting seeds from there. So we want to have a small seed bank, which we would like to give to other people who would like to start doing urban gardening in the city of Pondicherry. For the circle gardens, we are also making a little map, of where our gardens are coming up. And we would like to propose it, for Pondicherry is a very touristic place, and it's a destination where there is tourism that is happening. And we would like to also propose tourists or even residents of Pondicherry who are interested to have a cycling day out, visiting our gardens, and then maybe cooking and eating together with us, so that it is an experience which is more something which is more they have lived and therefore they have experienced, rather than something that they have heard, maybe on a webinar or on a workshop. So yeah, this is a little bit what we have been doing in Pondicherry.
Super. Thank you, Anjali. So just two short things that I wanted to add in terms of what we've been dreaming on and haven't yet been able to manifest. One is some alternative way of defining value, sharing value, distributing value, which could be an alternative currency. And we're looking at other organizations that are doing this in different parts of the world. And it seems that actually food in many places is the ideal place to start an alternative currency. Once people feel the confidence that they will be fed, they're much more willing to experiment with other things and play with currencies that are slightly off the usual. The second thing is anchor institutions. So in Pondi, we've got a big hospital, we've got a big university, we've got a big, like Anjali mentioned, tourism institutions. And we've seen in other parts of the world where if you've got a few of these large organizations that put their purchasing power behind this localization policy, it can create, again, this comfort factor, for example, amongst local farmers, that I can trust this market. There's a volume here that I can grow food and it will be used. And it also has a strong symbolic effect for other organizations. Like if one big organization gets on board, other organizations are more likely to follow. So these are two of the pipeline dreams that we're we're willing to unfold in the nearby future. So yeah, maybe it's good. Sangeeta said 20 minutes for a presentation, so that 20 minutes has passed a while ago. Maybe it's time for questions.
Yeah, thanks guys, and thanks Anjali. You guys were quite on time, so thanks for that. So we have good enough time to have discussions. Um, so there's already 2 or 3 questions. I just wanted to kickstart with one question that I was interested if you guys could tell us more about. Was about how the farmers that you're working with, how are certain young farmers or younger people are interested in farming, because when people from outside come in, there's a sense of that pride and the sense of this thing that, oh well, people are noticing these practices. So has your engagement been able to also excite a lot of young people who are not being able to farm now, or are excited to move out of the city, move in the cities and not stay in the villages or something?
So shall I take this question? Yeah. So I'll share 2 experiences which we have had with our existing farmers in Pondicherry. So one is Dinesh. He's a young.
Anjali,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but are you having connectivity issues? Otherwise, maybe if you can show yourself, it will be.
Okay. No.
Sorry, but it's just, yeah, we're not seeing you.
Yeah. Is it
That's
okay
great.
now? Can you
Yes,
see me?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
So we have this young farmer called Dinesh, and he was actually an engineering student living outside Pondicherry, and his father and family are traditionally farmers, but obviously he was the first generation going into higher education. And I think at a very young age, he got totally burnt out in the city life, and he started missing his home, his traditional cooking, and traditional food habits and all. And he then came back and he took over his father's farming, and he brought it into organic farming because his father was initially not into that. And right now, Samarpana farm is his farm, and he does traditional farming there. He And the fact that he comes back from the city, he has also opened a store, and the store also with the concept where he understands
Yeah.
the city requirement, and he can bring the village and the traditional farming and the food to a convention, situation of a city situation. This is one. And the other one is even more interesting, is about Mitra, and she's there in one of the pictures with the farmers with her father. Her father has been a farmer for more than 2-3 decades, and he has actually collected more than about 98 organic farmers around his own farm, and created it into a cooperative called as Krishna's Organic Cooperative. Now, they were undergoing a lot of losses and debts and all. So Mitra, who's his daughter, studied and was working in ITC in Chennai. So one weekend when she was back, her mom sent her as a spy with the father to see what is happening, because they were in the verge of also losing their home. So when she went there, and there was like a sort of a panchayat meeting, and her father was the head of the cooperative, and she heard one of the farmers say that in all these 25-30 years that he's been part of the cooperative, he has never had to borrow even 1 rupee from the banks or any lender. It has been always the cooperative that has been supporting. And that's when, like she was really touched, and she came back and she told her mother that she wants to leave her job. She told her husband she wants to come back and join her father, but more in the front end. So how can she connect the farmers, which are her father's creation over the past 35 years, to an urban reality which she knew more about? So that's how, so these were two stories actually I saw, where actually children who have gone back to the cities, gone to the cities, have come back and understood and appreciated the work of their parents, you know, over the past years.
Yeah, thanks. Guys, do you want to add anything? No? Okay. So there was another question about, is the organic food served in Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry, and is the model economically efficient?
So about the food being served in the Pondicherry Ashram organic. So yes, it is. I mean, the farms and the method that they are now inculcating in their farming practices are organic. Whether their farms are certified, that I'm not yet sure. But yes, their food and their farming practices are organic. Yes. Economically viable, because their food is all distributed in their own requirement and kitchen. So that is not something I can maybe answer. But yes, they're self-sufficient, and they also have extra, which now they're converting into value-added products, and then you know, distributing within the inmates of the ashram.
Sorry. Thanks. There is another question which is about a little more discussion on the alternative currency part. If you both can reflect on that.
Yeah, I can talk about that. So it's still in the works. Actually, I was triggered to thinking about this when Anjali was mentioning that you know, now we've got food and we've got people. You know, should we start a Facebook, you know, something, and you know, can we find people who can run like social media for us? And then I was thinking that, yeah, and then how can we pay them in food? You know, can we use whatever we are creating to use that to translate it into different types of value? And then I started looking into how other people are doing that, and what I found is that it seems that these two worlds, like the virtual world where the people are really good on apps and e-commerce programming and whatnot, and the more physical grounded world where people are exchanging seed and compost and vegetables, they're quite separate. You know, the skills required are quite separate. The lifestyles are quite separate. What I saw that people are using in urban settings, it tends to be more a service exchange type. You know, you have mutual credits in many cities, but to connect with agriculture is not often there. And on the other hand, if you have very agriculture-based things like community-supported agriculture, where you can take a share or a stake in a farm, often, you know, it's very much about the food. So I'm still thinking about, you know, can we come up with a system where we can merge these two worlds, because both are really important. Like what we're doing right now, it's requiring a lot of tech stuff. So then I started looking into in depth. I went into a rabbit hole, I must confess, in the alternative currency realm, with blockchains and holo chains and all kinds of chains. I am yet to come out of that rabbit hole to propose something workable yet scalable. So yeah, anybody out there who wants to co-create that, I'm all ears. Ashish.
Can I just follow up on that? So not to co-create, I'm too far away from you. But instead of digital, or in addition to digital, why not a physical, I mean, a good old fashioned physical alternative currency? I mean, I remember going to the 5 communities in Luxembourg that have the Beki as an alternative currency, and they're using that where I can go to a baker and buy bread. The baker can go to a farmer and buy wheat. The farmer can go to a doctor and pay for services. So there's a lot of local exchanges using a physical. It's like a euro, but it's produced locally. So, and each bakery is equivalent to €1. So you can actually then also exchange it in the bank and get a euro if you want to use it, because outside of those 5 communities, you can't use the bakery. So what about something like that? Has that been thought of?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, yeah, this is one of many options available. I also thought it would be the most obvious and the most exciting, and we can start tomorrow, like printing in our backyard. And then I put it across to some alternative currency designers, and they came with a lot of objections around counterfeit. If you can make the note, anybody else can also make the note. And if you share it amongst people, either you need to like physically record every transaction, but if you do that, then it becomes very cumbersome. So yeah, it's a possibility. I even thought of physical coins. There's a group in Amsterdam. What they do is they ask people to collect waste, segregate waste, and if you bring a few kilos of waste, you get a coin. With the coin, you can get a discount in the local, hospitality industry. But they closed and they went digital. And same with in the UK, the Bristol pound. They had this, and it worked quite well as a voucher. So it had an expiry date. And now they're closing and they're going digital. So I was like, if all these people who I look up to as like role models, if they're going digital, maybe I should learn from them first before I repeat the same. So I'm on that path.
Anthony, you were adding something?
Yeah, I see a question where they're saying whether these stories have come out and they inspire other youth and are they documented somewhere. So I just wanted to add over there. It's surprising to see how many youth actually come and participate, because I think that they do realize that, I mean, during this pandemic and what they have experienced, during the lockdown over the past let's say now nearly 5 months, that what they aspired for is actually something very, very far away right now. But what is local and what they can do with their own hands right now on spot is much more gratifying. So we have actually seen a lot of youth participating in the initiative that we have been doing for our circle gardens and for our fair food circles. And coming to another question is whether the government of Pondicherry has supported or accepted the fact that we started our circle gardens only in the month of July. 4th July we did our first circle garden. That was when the lockdown and the shutdown was happening. But when we had our workshop in the month of December, that was when the tourism director was there, with secretary was there with us, called Purva Garg, and she was extremely supportive about these initiatives, especially the farmers market, the circle garden. And so I do feel that once there's a little relaxation for the lockdowns that are happening now more and more in Pondicherry, we will be able to convince the government to take this even into Porumbuk land, as somebody asked that question. We want to do it in wasteland where there is nothing growing. Although one circle garden about a couple of years ago was done by Krishna and somebody else in a wasteland, but we also want to do it in primary hospitals. And we do have very good connections there, and they have space, and they really, because every primary hospital caters to a certain ward, so if they can start becoming self-sufficient. So we are making these conversations with the government very informally right now, looking at making this conversation a little more in depth as soon as things relax a little bit over here. But definitely, yes, working with NGOs, working with government is very important, even for maybe just sustainability and taking this project to the next level. There was one more thing I just wanted to add, and I feel that's very important for what we are trying to do. The fact that this whole project was initiated by the French Institute, uh, we are very privileged to have the opportunity to have many people who are willing to, do studies, document on the projects that we are doing. Because very often we just do projects and these are not documented, or we are not capturing information which are important information for validating the projects that we are doing. So for example, for our circle garden, we have Indu Bala. She is actually a PhD student who is joining us for this project. And she is really understanding, how circle gardens, how growing our own food is helping women, become empowering women, understanding traditional recipes around food. What is the culture that is happening around food? So when we do a project, if it is only research based, we don't know how it will be when you implement it. When you're just implementing a project without capturing data or having information that could be required, so then both, are with loose ends. Whereas in this project, for the first time, it's actually research in action. And that has been the main word for Helen, who has been the ideator of this local food platform. So it's research in action, and I find this very, very beautiful.
Thanks, Anjali. There are other few questions that have just come in. So are cooperatives making a comeback? ILO ran a series of reports after 2007-9 economic crisis on the resilience of cooperatives, and cooperative banks. What's the status? And just to follow other question, which is related to it, but important question that you guys had also spoken about briefly, or what are the efforts underway to conserve and propagate seeds of local greens that can be made available to more people to revive these greens? And also one of the questions that earlier was asked about how accessible is the organic food to the poor in the city of Pondi, and how you guys are thinking about that as a concern.
You want to talk about that, Anjali? About cooperatives, to be honest, I don't know if they're making a comeback. I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. The seeds, one thing which I think is interesting there is that both in Pondi and also in Orville, there's a revival of interest for weeds. So actually food that doesn't require any seeds. And it's quite spectacular, the number of weeds that we walk past every day, and we're not realizing that you can actually put them in the salad or in the soup. I live in a forest, and same thing for me. I've been pulling out these plants that I could have also put in my salad. And there's a lady called Nina. She made a really cool coloring book where kids can also learn how to recognize edible weeds, and it's becoming quite the local trend. And so also in these circle gardens, we're including not only cultivated plants but also wild plants, which, by the way, of course, are extremely cheap because they're grown. They grow themselves. So that also hopefully at one point will address some of the affordability questions. But maybe Anjali, you want to talk more about affordability?
I would just like to also maybe talk about a little bit, which is how accessible is organic food to the poor in Pondi. So this has been a topic that we have also been discussing extensively. Let's say in the bioregion where the farmers are and where they're already working as a cooperative with other farmers and all, they are eating organic because those who farm, those who are working in the stores, those who are collaborating in other ways, they eat at the farm and at farm level. But what we have been also seeing is whether we could, cook at a larger, in a larger scale, and see whether we can work with NGOs closely to bring this food to the people who need food. And especially during the lockdown, there have been occasions when there has been a requirement of, getting food either to, the people who really don't have it. So yes, it is something that we are looking at. It is not yet something that we have worked on, but one area where we are working is old homes. There are now about 6 to 7 old homes where we are going to go personally there, set up circle gardens, cook with them, and that becomes also like a social event, like a community event with the old home where they're left to themselves, there's nobody there. And we do intend taking some youth with us, some children with us, so that it becomes something a little more as a social gathering for the old people who are left there all alone. So we will start with the old homes where it's going to be a little easier for us, but we do have this in mind, and we would like to see how we can take it, to the next level and make it more accessible to the people who need food. Yes.
If you're done with the questions, I wanted to see if we can bring in some of the people, some of the other participants who are here to reflect on, because they're working in cities, to reflect on what are the possibilities in their cities, or maybe they're already doing something. So we have Aseem Mishra from Bhuj, and they have a very active program called Homes in the City, which we featured in one of the Vikalp Vārtās. There's Gautam from Punjab, and I don't know whether he works in Chandigarh also or not, or is associated with consumer groups there. And then Salam, who's in Imphal. I'm sure some of the others on this list, on this call are also involved. But does any of you want to reflect on similar possibilities, or maybe things already happening in your cities?
Also, Satish ji from Gadchiroli, Kochi.
Ah, yeah, Satish is there. I didn't see him. Sorry. Yes. Aseem, do you want to start? Aseem, आप हो क्या अभी?
Hello. Hello, can I talk? Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello.
I can hear you.
I can't figure out who's talking.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can I participate
Yes.
in the deliberation?
Yes, you can. Also introduce yourself.
I am from Bhubaneswar. I am Maheshwar Khillar. I am the managing trustee of the Kitchen Gardeners Association. We are working in Bhubaneswar. Mostly we are developing organic vegetables and fruits on the rooftop and backyard garden here. And we ask the people to cook their food and eat. And for the last 1 decade, we have been doing it. And many people have joined us. We have formed a city farmers group. And we are also sharing our views through a city farmers group and advising the people how to set up the garden. And once in a month, we also meet on the rooftop of one of our members where we share our knowledge and the products also. And this is 100% organic. And we use the home waste, kitchen waste, and leaves from our own resources. And besides some seeds from outside, we rely on the sustainable agriculture for the family health and welfare. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Mr. Killer, can you send us some details? We'll give you our email IDs here if you can send us details.
Further, we organize, this World Kitchen Garden Day that is on the last Sunday of August every year. And where we have a gathering, we can talk. Unfortunately, in this year, we are going to have an open air, of course, in the local language on this, and a year-long program of sharing the videos of 2 or 3 kitchen gardeners every week. And we are having a program, and the 30th we are going to start it. And I will share some videos if you can get the videos, photos, and our work
everything I can share also. There's no problem.
Thank
So
you.
in platform I will share, please give me the email ID or WhatsApp number so that I can also share.
Yes, we'll do that. I think Asim has gone off. Gautam can't talk because he's on a phone without this necessary connection. Salam, anything from you? Mufal?
Hello. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. You can hear me.
Yes, yes, go on.
Yeah. Very interesting to talk to listen to what's happening in Pondicherry. Actually, Manipur, we don't have much of these food circles happening and all. But what is uh, happening with us in a traditional way is that in Manipur, both in the valley and the hill areas, normally every individual family have their own kitchen gardens. So during this pandemic, especially during this lockdown period, uh, uh, we are getting some sort of relief from our own backyards. And the markets are not open, and people are finding difficulty in purchasing vegetable and other items from the market. But most of the people, especially in suburban and rural areas, they have their own resource in their backyard. So in a way, the traditional system of having their own kitchen gardens is really helping coping with this uh, lockdown period. That is one system. And uh, yesterday I was in the Loktak Lake, and what the fishers are now trying to do is because it's all water body, so they are trying to um, uh, develop some areas by dragging in these floating biomass and moving them in a circle, making them in a making like it's more like a garden in the water body. So they are trying to replant water species, water plant species that are becoming uh, extinct in lockdown. So like Ural pharaohs and other edible aquatic, both aquatic and semi-aquatic plants. So they started planting so that it supplements their food, since they cannot go outside of the lake and all. This system are happening, but uh, when you're talking about food circles and food community, it's not happening in that way. In the uplands, in the tribal villages, people collect food, vegetable from their own kitchen gardens, and they bring it together in a community hall, and they distribute it to quarantine centers and all. That is happening now in Manipur. Thanks.
I think Satish Bhau is also here. He wanted to say something earlier. Namaste, Satish ji.
Namaste. I am Dr. Satish from Gadchiroli, Maharashtra. We are so involved from last 7 years in promotion of the organic agriculture and promotion. So, and every year we organize a festival, Bijossav Nagpur. It is a 3-day festival, and there is all interaction of seed exchange, food, organic food, dishes, all these, and all sustainable livelihood means we organize it. This year, we cannot due to pandemic. But this year we started a weekly market at Nagpur. It is a good response, but due to lockdown, we cannot organize many farmers outside the Nagpur. But 3 to 4 farmers now they are coming to this weekly market, and it is the fifth. From last month we started. It is a good response too, because there is a promotion of organic farming. The market link is very important. So the peoples we sell that one purchase, and it is a regular supply. They always demand that where we get this one, and it is a problem in the city. It is a main problem. So we started this year that one. And I also learned many things from Pondicherry meet when Vikalpa Sangam. That and it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Satish Bhau. Pradeep ji, do you want to share something from Bhopal?
Okay, wait a sec. Okay, thanks guys. Thanks Ashish ji and everyone. Well, I won't say we have been doing something very spectacular, but some initial things that we have started. My daughter Puli is here, she's sitting with me. And she started, hey. So she started an organic farmers market called Anant Mandi, basically trying to bring all the organic producers together and setting up a consumer base for them at one place. And that was very well accepted and appreciated by people. And from 2 farmers, I think they went up to 10 farmers right now. And these are all more of those farmers who are leaving their corporate jobs and coming back to the city and moving into organic farming. Those kind of people who also would not only know farming, but also know how to do the business of farming. And they're all doing organic produce. So that's been going on pretty well. Just because of the lockdown, things have come to a halt, but they're now trying to, again, as guys said, that everyone is trying to move digital. So they are also exploring on how to move digital on those lines, still in the exploration phase. But along with that, I have also started experimenting something, which I've been discussing everything with guys, but then this I haven't with him. So probably it might be a surprise for him too. So what I'm trying to do here is, there are a lot of, so Bhopal being a tier 2 city has more of the senior citizen population. And most of the families, the children have gone out. And now these senior citizens, unfortunately, have big houses, which they're not able to manage, and big gardens, which they're never able to manage. So that's the scenario here. It's more of a horizontal city, not a vertical one. So there are more bungalows than flats and apartments. So we thought that why not we explore to take up these front yards and backyards of such houses, convert them into organic garden, and then create there's already a consumer base here in Bhopal. So why not create a system where local production for local consumption starts happening? And why I asked the question to guys, because on the alternate currencies, that here I'm trying to do that without any monetary exchange. That's a far-fetched dream, of course, but without monetary exchange, so that people can get pure organic food at their doorstep, and without going through the hassles of buying it from somewhere, and use their own front yards and backyards, which they cannot do right now. So I'm trying to get it done by mobilizing a few youth from the slums, where we are connected with our own work. So trying to get them together, teach them, some of them already know horticulture and a bit of kitchen gardening. So get them, mobilize them into groups and, get this going. So it'll be a system where a gardener is supported for the first 3 months by paying him a regular kind of a salary or something, in which he comes up and sets up the garden. And then once the garden starts producing, the produce is then taken by the gardener. So the family which owns the garden can take whatever they want on an everyday basis. So they get fresh produce from the garden, and the gardener takes the rest of the produce from the gardener, and he then gives it to the others who are associated with that community in a kind of a cooperative fashion. So we are trying to work it out that way, where there is minimum of money exchange, but most of it is done in a way so that it becomes a kind of a self-sustained community. It's still in the experimentation phase, so I'll be able to say something about it only after about 4 months or so, not before that.
That's great. It sounds really exciting. So 4 months from now, we'll ask you to do a webinar and tell us what's happening.
I wish I'm able to get some results with it.
Yeah, no, it sounds really exciting. Different things are happening in different cities, and I think it's really great to be able to exchange so that people can learn from each other and see the diversity of things that's happening, which could be relevant for different situations. Gautam, I think, has been able to get on to. Gautam, can you speak to us?
I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me? I mean, I don't know if I'm. Okay, great. So this is my first time I'm getting onto a Zoom thing. Anyway, what I was part of some years, 2 years back, was setting up a sort of a cooperative for consumers, because we understood that one of the big problems is for organic farmers to be able to sell their produce. So this is after, in fact, we had made a visit to Pondicherry, and we'd gone to Chennai and met with Anantu and got some ideas from there. So this is for Chandigarh, and there was a community already in existence which runs a school pretty much on the lines of the Krishnamurti Foundation. And so there's a set of 30 families. So these 30 families decided to pool in some money. It's almost like a club, actually. And with that money, we started buying organic food from farmers close by and from organic food producers, farmer producer organizations across India, like Sehat Samoda, in bulk. And this was bought, and this was for within the community itself. So what we managed to do was that we started with, start with 30 to 40 products bought in bulk, and slowly shifted over a few months to more and more local organic farmers in Punjab and Haryana. So right now, from what I've heard, we have more than 60 or 70 members. So this, what is bought in bulk, is meant only for these families. It's not meant for the public or anything. So it's a closed kind of situation. But what you're ultimately getting is you're supporting the farmer by buying in bulk from him directly as much as possible, and you are distributing from within the same community. And the only cost that really comes is the logistics, the rent that you pay for the place where you pack all your food, and the person whom you hire to pack it. So you're very low on cost. So it's no profit. So it's only for a very localized thing. So this is still running. It's been running, I think, now for 3 years, three plus years now. And there are more than 160 products from all over the country. A lot of them are local, around Chandigarh. So it's a very interesting thing. And I've been trying to set up a few more of them here where I'm staying, but people are finding it. I mean, it's taking time to convince people, but it works.
Thanks, Gautam. Back to the two speakers. So Anjali and Heist, do you want to reflect on anything that you just heard? And also there's an additional question about whether farmers, this thing of becoming commercialized and monetary has created problems across the country. So is there a way by which farmers can also be looking at the entire watershed and try and figure out how biodiversity across the watershed or river basin or whatever they're part of can be conserved? So if either of you wants to reflect on that question or any of what the other speakers have said, then please go ahead. Heist and Anjali.
Yeah, Anjali, go for it.
So I would just like to add a few things, like, what Pradeep ji and what Gautam ji are doing is really amazing, because it's not about big things. It's about these small steps, small initiatives, which then, gather momentum. And those are the momentums then that which are also more long lasting over time. So I think it's amazing what they're doing. What I would just like to say, one thing that we are doing in Pondicherry, where the plot sizes are little bigger, what we have done is we are encouraging other people to share plots so that they can grow their own food. So if somebody has maybe let's say 5 or 8,000 square feet, then others can have their vegetable beds around the same area, so that they have space, because maybe they're living in flats and they don't have space. So Pradeep ji, if there are people who have the front yards and backyards, and other people can grow with them and share the food, so it becomes also like a sharing, working together on their land and also sharing land for food. So that was something that just came to my mind when you were mentioning about these big spaces that are now available for elderly people, but no takers, basically. That was one. And the second thing I would like to add is that what we are doing as a local food system in Pondicherry is something that we do not want to limit only to Pondi. It is something that we would like to really take it to other cities. And we would love to see along with you how we can, make this like maybe into an open source, or whatever we are doing, whatever our experiences are, whatever we are documenting can be shared with other cities, so that our learnings can, help others. And we would also like to know where we can get learnings from, maybe what all of you are doing, so that, our experience, what we do in Pondicherry also can grow into something more, um, let's say it's through your experience, it becomes our experience. So, something like that. So we'd really be open to share our things and learn also from what maybe Gautam ji and Pradeep ji and the others. Like Manipur, it's an amazing story. I mean, when the entire country has been suffering and being for food, here the semi-urban and the rural have had food to eat because of a tradition that of home farming that they always had. So I think these are big learnings for us, especially in the urban situation, that we would also like to, implement and go forward and share our experiences with others. So that is what I would like. I wanted to add.
Thanks, Anjali. Guys, any reflections?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to speak a little bit about Usha's comment. Usha's typing away frantically in the chat. So one, on this notion of the farmer being the steward of the commonly held land and having a watershed consciousness, I completely subscribe to that. And in Pondicherry, we're actually facing a disaster because we're close to the ocean and we're pumping out our aquifers 10 times faster than they're being recharged. So, very soon we're going to be pumping salt water. And once that's the case, then basically, khatam, we can't grow anything anymore, anywhere. So it's like a time bomb that we're sitting on. However, when you go and talk to farmers, there's this situation that, if I don't pump the water, my neighbor is going to pump the water. I think in general, farmers have this habit of seeing themselves as the victim of the system, which is true to a large degree. So I guess while I was talking about confidence building measures, like you have between India and Pakistan, I think we need confidence building measures between producers and consumers, where if we go with like 5 consumers to a farm, they're going to look at us and say, okay, how many kilos are you able to consume? I have this many acres. If we start talking about bulk, like Gautam was saying, then we can start trusting each other. Yeah, this is why I feel, for example, this roping in of institutions can be really important, because if we've got a couple of institutions, we've got like bulk procurement, like stability. It's a lot easier for farmers to trust and to think that, I can actually plan for this at farm level. One thing that struck me when Anjali was talking about the importance of visiting farms, I was actually thinking of the farm itself is an actor, is a stakeholder in the system. I was thinking about like, why is it so important to go and meet the farmer in the village? Why can't we just get the farmers to the cities? A lot more efficient. But actually, the land, the farm, the whole constellation of the animals, the crops, the water, it is a stakeholder that we're not yet really clued into. How do we invite them into our meetings? How do we help set priorities and agendas and make decisions that include the voice of the farm, not just the farmer who is the steward of the farm. And then the other bit that Usha mentioned about urbanites adding their labor and volunteering at peak times. There's actually an interesting model in Orville where Orville has 15 farms. They're all struggling for labor. Nobody wants to be a farmer full-time, that is. So they've figured out a way how you can reward people who come regularly with a food basket. So if you come for half a day every week, you can get like a 1 kilo, I think it's a 5 kilo a week food basket. And it's a very direct exchange. You similar to what Anjali was saying in the circle garden, you eat the food that you've just participated in growing yourself, and it's a bit of a time bank / food bank model. So that has seemed to be working. Now there are many other people who are asking permission to speak, so I'm going to shut up.
No, you folks have priority today.
I would
But yes,
just
so
like
we
to
have.
Can I just
Sorry,
add
Anjali.
something?
Yes,
Yeah.
go on. Yes.
You know, Hais talked about a very important word called trust. Now, we were having an amazing conversation with a restaurant owner and a farmer, and they were talking about, let us say, I commit to buy all your tomatoes the whole year round. And the farmer was listening, you know, and he's saying, can we fix a price? So the farmer was very straightforward and he said, yes, we can fix the price for the whole year. We can fix the price. So the restaurant owner said that, okay, let us say, I'm just giving offhand, let's say we are going to buy your tomatoes for 54 rupees, but that will be the price for the whole year. In case the price of the tomato drops in the market, we will continue to give you 54 rupees. In case it increases, we will continue to give you 54 rupees. So that was a conversation that went on and all. And the farmer kept listening and nodding and saying yes and yes and yes. And then he suddenly said that, no, but so then somebody else who was listening to this conversation asked the farmer that, are you understanding what he's saying? That in case if the tomato prices go up to 84, will you continue to give this restaurant owner who's actually depending on your tomatoes and committing to buy your tomatoes for the whole year, will you still give it to him for 54 rupees? And the farmer looked at him and said, no, I will not. I'll go and sell it in the market. So it's also about, you know, a reverse trust. It's a trust both ways. It is the farmer trusting the person who's going to buy, but it is also the buyer trusting the farmer. You know, so it was a very, and you know, the farmer said it as though it was most normal. So it's also building conversations for long-term commitment. And farmers are so used to just something that is immediate, but they're not to blame for it, because that's how they have been living for so many decades, so many centuries maybe, that we forget that. And just because we are wanting to bring in a new conversation today, but it'll take time, it'll take commitment from both sides, you know. And the restaurant owner cannot be picky about the farmer's B grade tomatoes. He will have to do something about it. And so it is about changing the conversation not only at the farmer level but also at the consumer level, you know. So there are multiple levels that we are noticing while we are working and starting our conversations with the farmers and the consumers, that will take more time, that will take patience, that will take commitment from both sides, and a proper understanding. The farmer understanding, and so does the consumer need to understand. So it's it's a lovely journey.
And this is also where I think collectives help, no? Because the individual farmer and the individual restaurant owner is difficult to work out that kind of a relationship of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
You have collectives,
Absolutely.
you are able to buffer the uncertainties a bit more. We have two
Absolutely.
people who wanted to speak. So I think Kunutar Srinivas Reddy, you wanted to say something. Can you please you can say, and then
am I audible now?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Very good evening, respected participants and speakers. I only have one point in view. In order to promote the organic farming movement in India, it is imperative that the seed has to be certified. Unless the seed is certified, nobody would try to believe us. Notwithstanding all the organic farming practices that we are adopting at the field level, the fundamental question would be that the seed has got to be certified. If this point is taken care of, then the organic farming movement will be at a very, very fast and higher level of activity in India. India, by virtue of its natural resources, is excellent in promoting this concept of organic farming. This is all what I submit before all
Thank
of
you.
you.
Thank you. Do either of the speakers want to respond? I have a brief response to it, but Hais and Anjali, anything you want to say on that? Certification of seeds?
Yeah. So I have been in the cotton industry for more than 17 years, and we have been working with organic cotton where multi-cropping was one of our key focus areas as well. And I do understand the importance of certification, but I also feel that, you know, certification has a cost which maybe today a farmer cannot pay. So it's a catch-22. It is important, it is relevant because it validates you know, a product or the seed, let's say, you know, about its authenticity and about the fact that it is organic. But I do not know whether really, it's not I don't know it, I know that certification is a cost that today farmers cannot take on. It's through my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an additional angle to this. There was actually a lot of discussion on this when the Seed Act and the Biodiversity Acts were being discussed more than a decade ago, almost 2 decades back. And a number of farmers and groups working with farmers and groups like yours that are working with farmers that are trying to grow a diversity of seeds made, I think, which is a very, very important point, that certification becomes a system of domination by those who are certifying us. And usually that certification is either government controlled or corporate controlled. So instead, in fact, the farmers' movements created and have been using the PGS, the PGA, the Participatory Guarantee Scheme, which is where there's peer certification that's taking place, farmer to farmer, and it's fairly robust because you can have spot checks by any government agency to see actually whether, because I've certified your seed as a farmer, have I done some malpractice? And if I do, the entire group or the entire village or the entire community gets disqualified. And I think we need, these are the sorts of systems, more democratic systems, which are accessible, which we need. And the second crucial thing is, we have farmers who grow 50, 100, 200, 300 varieties of seeds, or a village that might have 400, 500 varieties. Now, where is the possibility of actually them being able to access a formal certification system and then not do any sales until that happens, given the incredibly inefficient and corruption-ridden bureaucracy that we have? So to my mind, certification of seeds is a very dangerous path to go if it's a formal official process. We need democratic processes of creating the trust, and a PGS Thappa creates that trust. It's a trust between the consumer and the producer, or between producers and producers. We need much more of that kind of thing, Mr. Reddy, I would say, rather than trying to go for this formal certification. A lot of formal certification, for instance, in Sikkim, is actually oriented to export. But that's not the kind of thing that I think Hais and Anjali are talking about. We're talking about localized systems where there's local food sovereignty and security, and not our food being exported to Europe or whatever. That's not, I mean, if the Europeans want organic food, they should produce it themselves. So I'm sorry if I'm saying it a bit strongly, but I think this whole certification thing needs to be, both certification for organic and certification for seeds needs to be examined very closely from a point of view of justice and democracy, apart from the ecological aspects. We did have also another, I think, somebody else, Raj Singh Vermaji, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, sure, sir. Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, and we can see the film that you're promoting.
Okay. Thank you for such a brilliant webinar. I am from Mumbai, and I was wondering if there is a possibility of creating a database, collective database on Google or somewhere, where people can share their experiences and their problems while doing it. For example, I bought a land close to Mumbai to make a small little food forest, and having some issues in terms of, I just made a little Miyawaki food forest. The villagers are saying that this forest will bring snakes and they'll have problems, so the resistance coming in. So a couple of things like how to deal with that, and also sourcing native seeds. So there are a couple of questions like that. If I'm sure a lot of people who are trying to do something and facing issues, if there's a common database where people can share from their experience how they dealt with all this, I was just wondering, it'll be great help. I'm also trying to make a transition from city to small scale farming close by in the village, wherein it becomes a demo farm, but some resistance coming from the locals, how to deal with it. So this is just one little thing.
Anjali,
Also,
any thoughts on? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Any thoughts for?
Yeah. So, very briefly on the certification, I just typed it in the chat. Also, in our meeting, we had a retailer who was concerned about how will I tell which food was local and which food was not local. There was talk about having like a charter of participants in our local food system, and we would take a pledge like we will all follow these principles and values. And then there was this question how to protect the boundary of this. And then a label was proposed, and yeah, I have the same concern as Anjali. Maybe it's because our shared experience in the dysfunctional organic and fair trade certification movement. But not only is it costly, not only is it like government or corporate dominated, but it also it's like a shortcut for a dialogue. Once you've got a label, you don't need to talk to each other anymore. And this right now, it's also happening with a lot of this technology, which I'm discovering in my rabbit hole. Like the blockchain talks about a trust-free system where you don't need to trust in a human, you just trust the algorithm, and that is presented as a good thing. So now there are actually conversations within this whole techie realm that we should create systems that are not so foolproof that we end up trusting the technology rather than the humans. So to rather create technologies that enable more alive, more meaningful conversations. So this also brings me to the second point of the database. I'm actually really interested to explore non-Facebook, non-Amazon, non-Google, non-Apple owned platforms where we can meet each other as like-minded initiatives and exchange learnings. And interestingly, all these people that are developing all these hi-fi currencies, they're all sharing their information about their inventions on these decentralized networks like Hilo and Scuttlebug and yeah, all very exotic sounding platforms, which it's yeah, I find it a little bit difficult. We're having this conversation in Vikalp Sangam as well. On the one hand, your WhatsApp and your Facebook, it's more commonly shared. Most people have these apps on their phones already. So, if you shift away from that, then it's another level of exclusivity. But I would like to do a bit of both, like, share the introduction and the invitation maybe on the easily accessible platforms, but then gradually move out of these corporately dominated platforms.
Thanks. I think just a quick response to the previous question on the sharing of knowledge and information. So there is, I think, now a national database that somebody is preparing through the revitalization of rain-fed agriculture network on organic farming across the country. So perhaps that will become a national level database of the kind that I think Raj Singh ji was asking about. But also through the Vikalp Sutra process, which we will send out a mail on soon. The attempt is to try and see how there can be national level networking to create dignified, sustainable livelihoods, including in the organic farming sector. So perhaps over the next few months, we'll have a better system in place to create this kind of exchange, practical information exchange also. I also wanted to just point to everybody that Pantangi has, I'm sorry if the pronunciation is wrong, Pantangi has put up the link for the participatory guarantee scheme thing that I just mentioned. So please do take a look. And Sangeeta has invited anybody who wants to continue being in a conversation on city food systems to please write to us or to Sangeeta. Maybe you can give your email ID, and so that this conversation can continue. It's actually been very nice to have 5-6 other people who are doing or trying out various things in cities on this call itself. And there is a whole separate process for urban agriculture, which Rajendra, Ravi, and others are leading. So I think we should try and figure out some way of making a national level connection, maybe a network of sorts on urban food or urban gardening and agriculture. Okay, does anybody else have anything else, or do Anjali and Hais have any last thoughts before we end?
Hello. Am I audible? Can I share?
Yes, Killerji, please.
Yeah. In Bhubaneswar, what we are doing, because we are not talking of the seed, certification, this, that, but we are looking at a very local scale, human scale production, because of the rooftop garden or urban horticulture, urban gardening, whatever it may be. Because the land, labor, and water are very scarce. That's why we are promoting this. And for the seeds, really we are not believing the seeds that we are getting from the market. Many times in the journalists, we have developed a seed bank. So we have asked our farmers, the city farmers, to collect their seed and they intimate what is surplus with them. Then when we are meeting in a month in one place, suppose 50 farmers, we sit on the rooftop of a gardener, city farmer gardener, we share our experience, we share seeds, we share the plants. Thereby, we are sure of getting, this is trust building, because the seed that we are getting, it germinates. Or even we share the saplings. So not, it is always, we are talking of the high-ended things, we will get certified, to argue is all right. But when we want our food to come from the roof to our kitchen, to cook in our place, we must be sure the things we are producing, that it must be organic, it must be healthy for our need, and it must be need-based. Suppose, let me tell you, I have got a kitchen garden here on the rooftop, I have got a neem plant. So anybody who comes, he says, sir, what are you doing? Why are you having a neem plant? Because I have the habit of taking, chewing the two neem leaves in the morning. So that's why the neem plant is on my rooftop. So according to my requirement, according to requirement of my family, I have developed my own kitchen garden on the rooftop. And we are also preaching, we are telling, Sangeeta is very much there. And I know we have attended a number of seminars, workshops. So that is the system by which we are doing it. And sir, to inform you, this pandemic had given enough scope for us. Every time there is no time for me, every time my telephone rings. Because people want, when there is a lockdown, they could not get any food. The help is only the rooftop kitchen garden or the backyard garden. At the same time, there is no time. So many people in one place, they find a place in the rooftop to talk and to relieve their tension. So everybody said, sir, aapko kaise karna hai, kya karna hai. So we are having videos and we are sharing them. We are talking to them. We are asking them to collect the seeds. Really, it is doing wonder. And it is also doing in different places. In the gentleman was asking about Bombay. They can urban leaves. He can contact if he wants to have the, that is Priti Patil. She is there to help. There is many organizations, those who are working. Sangeeta, she is doing in that in her area. In Bangalore recently, Dr. B.N. Viswanathan, who is called the father of the expired. No? So there are many people, if we can connect by your this things, because it's the second time that I have joined in this group that I am hearing it. So I think we can do wonders for the people. Regarding seed, no, in Bhubaneswar, very nearby, there are 560 type of seed only for the paddy. They are doing it. A number of seeds. There are many places. Just it needs to be coordinated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
We will write to you, and if you can send us some material on it, and maybe an article, we can publish it on the website on the Google initiatives. So I think we need to close now. But Anjali and Hais, any final thoughts?
No, thank you very much. It sounds very interesting and exciting to have this multi-city Food System Learning Alliance, and I look forward to learning from and with all of you.
Thank you, Anjali.
Much again, yes. And I think, for me, the learning that I've got from here today through this webinar is like each one of us is really committed and we are really doing the best we can in what we believe in. And I think, that is much greater than any certification or any policing that needs to be done on us. And we need to continue to put our efforts genuinely with 100% commitment and belief in what we are doing. And there is no, we are sure to achieve, and I'm convinced that that is the way forward, because we cannot always be monitoring, policing, and spending money on certification. It has to be a shift in our consciousness. It has to be shift in for our own well-being. And when we have that attitude that it is for our own well-being and the well-being of the planet, I don't think then we need anybody from outside to monitor us. So I'm so fortunate to be part of this group today, and I really am feeling very excited that we can take this pan-India, and I'll be really happy to share whatever we are doing in Pondicherry. If there is we can create something and share with the other cities. That will be just amazing for me. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you, Anjali and Hais. This has been fantastic. It's always great to hear about good things happening from cities, because they are a bit rarer than what's happening in villages.
Yes.
So it's wonderful, and especially non-traditional sectors, in the sense that city and food is always thought of as being somewhat separate, or city and farming. So it's really good to be able to break those conceptual barriers, and both of you have done that really nicely today. Thanks a lot for that. I think also the very strong message that the best currency is trust, or trust and solidarity, not so much the money that we have to keep using, unfortunately, still in our lives. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks to the entire organizing team also. And we will announce to everybody our next webinar, which should be 2 weeks from now.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Can the organizing team stay back, please?
Yeah.
Did Vinay dropped off, and Juhi, I think, dropped off early on. Okay. So thanks, guys. That was good.
Yeah, very nice.
You both were short and crisp.
Anyway, because I didn't hear the presentation, so I don't know the story myself. I'll have to go and watch the video. I've not been involved or updated much beyond little bits of.
Oh, we could stop the recording. I think. I don't know whether we can.